Hi guys, so I wanted to make some daily vlogs just for my own benefit really. I am really unwell at the moment. I've had quite a big relapse and I just had the thought that it might help me get through each day because I'm taking it one day at a time. If I've got something where I'm sort of documenting and I'm knowing that I've got this thing to do, and I've always found YouTube very therapeutic in that regard. Not some of the comments. The comments haven't always been therapeutic, but being able to have a space where I can just talk about stuff is very helpful for me. So if you didn't see my last video, I got a bug a while ago and I had a huge relapse. I had a breakdown. I'm not sure if I'm still in it or not, but I'm getting psychotic symptoms at the moment. Very, very bad emetophobia. I'm not sleeping, so they've given me like quite strong sedatives, which is probably why I'm like I am right now. I'm just recording this from a weird angle underneath myself because I'm just recording on my iPad. So yeah, I have been very unwell. I'm at the moment, this is not at my worst, thankfully, because obviously I'm able to make this, but when I am getting bad, it's getting to the point where I can't talk. Like I don't want to speak. I have to focus on like not being ill, and I am just like getting these panic attacks that's so bad. There was one night when I had like a complete breakdown where I think the plan was originally, I think they were going to put me in hospital, I don't know. My mum didn't really know what to do. Apparently she said I wasn't really recognising her. I was very, very upset. I was very scared. And I do remember some of that. Grandma and Granddad came round. I'm close to my grandma and Granddad. So, but I didn't really respond to them either. It was just very bad, and I think, I talk a lot about like mental health stuff on this channel, and that's how this started. And I think I started this when I was 19. I think I started when I was 19, but I don't think you guys have ever, you didn't know me when I was very, very ill, so you've only ever known me at a certain point past the illness, and I just figured, what's the point in hiding it? If it might help somebody or help me, or, if anything were to happen to me, which I pray it doesn't, then, there's something there. I don't mean that in like a weird way, like I don't think I'm going to be murdered or anything. I just mean that like, I am not really in control of myself right now, and I am afraid that I will die. So, I am afraid of basically taking my own life. I'm quite afraid of. It's like there's a different side of me. Like there's the side of me that is desperately like trying to get better and try and get help, and there's the other side of me that just takes over, and it's just terrible. But yeah, you didn't know me before, and I was very, very ill before you guys knew me. Very sick. I was, I had lost my mind, basically. I know that's not the appropriate terminology for it. I'm sorry about that. But, yes, I was basically having delusions. I was psychotic. I was in a very bad home situation which had triggered it off. So there was a lot of things going on in my life that had triggered that off very badly. And I was going through a lot psychologically, and I was delusional, and I wasn't sure what was real and what wasn't. I just completely lost touch with reality at that point. I was very, very ill, like really sick, and I don't think you guys, that you guys can't really understand that. Well, I mean, you can understand it, but you don't, I guess you don't associate that with me because you only saw and only see my videos when I'm able to talk to you. And obviously I didn't have YouTube at that point because I wasn't even well enough to like to pick up a camera. Like I was on, they were trying me on different antidepressants. I was regularly self-harming. I was just so ill. I was basically like planning my own suicide as like constantly, and like I was just really ill. And I guess the closest I've seen to something like that, to try and describe that to you, I don't know if any of you guys ever watched Skins, the UK version. I suppose elements of Cassie and Effie put together, maybe. It was similar to what I was going through, only I was more detached from my reality because of certain stuff that was going on at home and stuff that through the years had happened that kind of built up. I had my first major breakdown situation when I was 12. That was the first time that I had a full-on breakdown. I was exceptionally ill then. I was really ill. And I was, like, obviously not well from that time till when I was about, like, I don't know, I think I was, like, 17 or 18, 19, 16, 17, 18, 19, I don't know. But I got to a point where I just lost my mind. Like, I was genuinely not sure what was real and what wasn't. And I didn't think that the world was real, so I didn't think that anything had any, like, consequences, and I wasn't sure, like, what it all meant, and the weirdest thing about that was that people didn't realise, which makes sense considering the home situation we were in, because it wasn't, like, a situation where, like, anyone would have realised that I was, like, losing my mind. A couple of my friends helped me out. I think I stopped talking at school, and I was definitely, I mean, at that time I was, like, planning different ways to die, and I was thinking, every day when I used to go to school, I used to get, like, severe panic attacks, and there was this road outside our school, I won't say the name of the road, and every day I used to think to myself, I'm going to walk into the road and I'm going to get hit by a car. And every day I would wake up with that as an idea, and it was almost a comfort to me because I just thought, like, anyway, it got to a point where, like, I wasn't giving in work. My attendance was so poor because some days I just, like, was too panicked to even go. But at the time, people didn't realise I was ill. My family didn't realise I was ill. That's still difficult for me because I absolutely love my family, but I just feel like, I don't know, our family is very much, like, in some ways, very much, like, appearance driven. So when I was 12 and I had my breakdown the first time, I had to do therapy. And my family, certain members of my family were quite resistant to it because they wanted to be like, well, no, she's a high achiever, she's smart, like, there's nothing wrong with her, like it was an insult. And that, in turn, made me feel very ashamed. And I was treated like I was naughty, basically, like I was doing wrong. And I still struggle with that because I internalised that idea young, that I was acting up and being a problem, which is really insane because I was actually such a good kid. Like, genuinely, I was such a good kid. But yeah, that was me being naughty. So that happened. And then other stuff happened at home, and emotionally I was just like a mess. And it just came to a head where I just got to these years of, like, I didn't even tell people because I had the feeling that I was going mad. And that's the thing, I always thought, because I realised that I couldn't be that bad, but that's not how it works, and I was very bad. I was convinced every day that I was going to get killed. I thought that there was going to be a school shooting. I was petrified, and I wasn't me, and I felt like nothing was real and nothing mattered or had consequences, and that it was like a virtual reality. That's how I can describe it. Like, I felt like I had to wake myself up by killing myself, and that that was how I had to do it. Like, I had to get the guts to get myself out, because things were so emotionally difficult, which is something that I always kind of wish I could talk about it. Like, I always wish I could talk about that situation that I went through, and that had went on for a long time. But I can't talk about it because it's so difficult when something is not malicious, when something is not ill intent, when something is people's, their own vulnerabilities and their own issues. It's hard to talk about, and it was a very, very difficult situation. And I still struggle to this day with that, because I know I have big problems with letting people talk to me or treat me a certain way, and I'm quite emotionally vulnerable and anxious because of that stuff. And it's something I do wish I could talk more about, but like I don't think it doesn't do any good, because it's in the past, so it doesn't feel like it'll do any good. But yeah, I there was a lot of stuff when I was younger, a lot of stuff going on. When I was having my really bad breakdown in my late teen years, part of our family situation, we have some really odd stuff going on, but we've got a certain, it doesn't really matter because you don't know, I can say a little bit, and we had obviously I had, my dad left when I was 3.5, and then Dan was born like in the next few weeks, so Dad was gone and Dan was there. And I always say, in some ways it was the best thing that ever happened, not because I didn't have my dad, but because I had Dan, and it made us very close, and because Mum and Dad, I love them both to bits. Like, I really, really love my mum and dad, but they weren't, I don't think they were meant to be together, I think it was better that they were apart. I just feel upset about the way that it happened, and obviously the loss of my dad and stuff that happened, and not seeing him and stuff, it did wound me a lot, and I still feel like I've got like this, I still feel like I have this hole in my heart. Like, it's difficult, to not have part of you and part of your family and stuff. But it's not like, it wasn't a situation where there's any like blame to attribute or anything like that. It's just one of those things that happens. And like, I can't fault my parents for love. I'm very loved by my parents. Like, they both let me know that. They both really do let me know that. But that was difficult. And then we had situations in our family where we have, like, I think I've spoken about this before, we have like a bit of an old uncle, and there was like this, my mum was very mistreated, which I witnessed when I was young, and it was very upsetting. And then I was, I don't know, this was very toxic. My adult uncle really hated me, when I was a kid, and like, that was weird. And then we didn't see him and my cousin anymore, and that was the only cousin we saw. Really love my cousin. You still do, but I don't see her anymore. I think that side of the family, he wrote me this letter when I was like, it was kind of mad to me, but like, I was really depressed. This is when I was suicidal. This is when I'd overdosed and all that stuff. And I think, like, my family had, like, continued to, like, reach out to him. Like, my family are, like, they're good people, and they believe in, like, the goodness of people, and they're very forgiving people. And I try and be like that as well, but it's more difficult when it happens to people you love and you're watching it and you're just thinking, like, it makes you so upset to see the people that you love treated that way. But there was this letter that was sent about how I was, like, unladylike and man-hating and not the sort of person that, they wanted, like, my cousin to associate with and all that kind of stuff. And, like, I was very suicidal at that time anyway. And, like, this continued, like, I think in the last couple of years, like, the same thing happened with Dan as well. This same uncle started, like, mocking him and, like, talking like a villain almost, which is bizarre, you know. He said something like, oh, your mum and sister will get what's coming to them eventually, then you'll see. Like, genuinely, it's like I've got a villain, like as an uncle. It's a bit weird. Those were weird situations, because we used to have these family holidays together, and even when I was a kid, I used to realise that this guy just, like, did not like me, and I think it was like a jealousy thing, which is hard to explain, but it was like, there was a lot of competition in terms of, like, I think they wanted to have the first kid, and I was the first kid, and I think they wanted the first son, and Dan was the first boy out of the grandkids, and, you know, it's just a shame, really. It was a real shame, because, you know, I really do love, and did love, you know, my cousin. I've had a great time with her, so that was something else that went a bit weird, and over the years, this was, like, an ongoing thing, and it would cause great upset, and, like, this guy basically terrorised the family, like, psychologically, like, made my, like, great-grandma, like, cry and sob, and, like, the way he spoke to my mum was just appalling, and, you know, she my dad divorced through no fault of her own, you know, it was Dad's fault that they divorced, you know, as much as I love him, and, you know, I don't blame him, because relationships are hard, and he was, like, you know, he used to, like, mock her for being divorced, and, you know, really, really very, very toxic person, I think. So that was going on when I was growing up. The dad on and off issue was going on growing up. My mum and my dad don't have an amicable relationship. Well, now they kind of do, but they didn't then. And I kind of grew up, like, feeling like my dad was bad, and that the parts of me that were like him were bad. So I didn't want to, like, I was ashamed, and, like, when I was naughty, well, not naughty, but if I did something that wasn't, like, good, then it was like, oh, you're just like your dad. That's that side of you coming out. Like, you're selfish like him, you're this like him. And, like, throwaway comments, you know, that people don't think makes an impact, but it did at the time, especially because I was so attached to my dad, and I was always loyal to my mum, because our relationship is really close, and in some ways it's way too close, because it was just the three of us. Like, obviously my grandma and granddad have been a big part of our lives as well, but in the house it was just me, mum and Dan, and I became very young at 3.5, like, my grandparents, you know, called me, like, Dan's second mother, or they called me that, like I was Dan's little mother, and I kind of filled that gap in a way, so I became, like, I had to be an adult too fast emotionally, and I became too attached to my mum, because she was being very mistreated because of the stuff that I was saying in the family, and I could see that as a kid, and it hurt me, and I felt like I had to stand by her and be that support for her, and also for Dan, because he was younger, and all these things just kind of added up. So I became emotionally, like, enmeshed with my mum. You know, I never really became myself, because I didn't feel like I could become myself. There was a great feeling of strange, you know, it's very difficult for a child to feel hostility and dislike from an adult that you love or are taught to love, and, you know, that's difficult to experience something like that as a child, especially when your father is not in the picture and you miss him. That's very difficult. And then I obviously had my mental illness symptoms happened because of what was going on and all that stuff. I was a very emotional child. I was very, very well behaved. Like, I was so well behaved that it was, like, always talked about, like, that the family were, like, proud of me because of it, and, like, my school reports were always like, oh, she's so well behaved, and, like, she's so academic, and she's such a perfectionist. And I think it was because I felt like I couldn't ever do anything wrong. I had to be perfect, and I couldn't be, like, naughty and, like, that kind of thing. I didn't want to let anyone down. And then, because I had those mental illness symptoms, I got bullied at school. This is a very complicated situation, but I used to have quite a lot of time off when I was about 12, I had to go and see all different people. And at the time, even then, they didn't realise I had mental health issues. Like, even though throughout my life I'd been showing them in a major way. And every time, like, my physical symptoms were being looked at, like I had gastritis because of the stomach acid, which is actually from the stress, and I was having headaches and migraines so that my vision was dizzy, and that was stress. So all the stress symptoms were being treated, but they never once realised that, like, this is a kid in psychological crisis, which I really was. I mean, I was thinking about suicide age 12. I was self-harming by 12. Before I even knew what self-harming was, I was self-harming. I just couldn't handle the feelings and the tumultuousness and the uncertainty and the emotional instability of things, and how everything just felt unsafe and scary and out of control. And so that was all going on. And then when I finally had that huge breakdown, I was basically treated like I was naughty for having the breakdown, and so I internalised that and thought I was naughty and couldn't understand what was wrong with me, and I just used to sob, and I wrote diaries, and in my diaries at 12 I'm writing about how I wish I was dead and how I'm letting everyone down, and why am I crying all the time, why can't I get out of bed, why am I so scared? And yeah, so that, all that family stuff in the background, weird family situation, very nasty uncle, which is a weird situation too, a generational thing. It's kind of weird. Like, I kind of think of it as like, families like have arguments and things, but this was beyond that. This was like a kind of weird targeted thing. It was a very strange experience, and like, it's only now, when I'm older, do I look at it and think, Jesus, like, that was horrific. And yeah, it was just, in some ways, like, I look at it and I think, like, my mum went through a lot, and because of that was because why she was the way she was, because she went through that. And Dan and I have talked about this loads. Like, we want to be the ones that, like, that break the cycle. And like, I mean, Dan wants to have kids, and I'm the sort of person that I do want to have kids, but I don't think I will have them. I'd always kind of wanted to adopt kids. I just like the idea of giving a home to somebody that needed it and that was in crisis, kind of helping them out. But I don't know if I'm stable enough, honestly, and because my upbringing was so unstable and it really affected me, I kind of don't want to do that to a child, so I would have to be completely sure that I was okay before I had kids. So I don't know if that's ever going to happen for me, but Dan and I have definitely spoken about this a lot, and how, like, it's not a weakness to be kind, and it's not a weakness to apologise, and it's, you know, we're not competitive in any way. We love each other so dearly. Like, Dan, you know, Dan's my best friend, and sometimes I just wonder, like, in some ways it's a miracle that we are, like, how we are. We've said this before, but, like, it's like a blessing and a miracle, really. Our bond is just so strong, maybe because of what was going on around us. And I remember growing up taking a lot for Dan before he was even old enough to know it. I you know, from a really young age, it must have been since he was a baby, because that's my memories. You know, I was 3.5 and I was already taking stuff for Dan, emotionally kind of shielding him in a lot of ways that he didn't realise because he was little, trying to make things okay for him that hadn't been okay for me. I saw a tweet about that the other day, about, like, oldest siblings and stuff like that. I know it's not the same in every household, but there was a lot, you know, like, I still remember little things, like if Dan, like, spilt a drink or something, I remember, like, rushing out to the kitchen, like, getting kitchen roll quickly and, like, mopping it up, and then saying that Dan would be upset, and I'd be like, don't worry, we'll say I did it, and I'd say I did it. Stuff like that. So I've always, I guess, like, put other people before myself, and I don't mean that in, like, a kind of, like, selfless, like, oh, like, how wonderful I am sort of way. That was how I was. I didn't have a choice, you know, that was it. You know, Mum was not well. She was being very much mistreated in a lot of ways. So she was not well. She needed me a lot, and that's part of the issue that I have now. You know, we're too. It's difficult. I don't think I ever became my own person, really. I was her support because she needed the support because of the weird stuff. So I never really grew into my own person. And that's what I appreciate about YouTube, because it's the first place in my life, really, that I've ever been able to just to speak, like, as me. And even then, like, there's some stuff I don't want to say and some stuff I can't say, and a lot of stuff that happened that I just can't talk about. So yeah, then the school thing happened, and yeah, they, you know, because I didn't have to go to assemblies, so I used to get panic attacks and stuff, and I missed a lot of school, and kids can be quite cruel and nasty, and I got quite bullied at school. I did dancing. I went to ballet lessons, ballet, tap and jazz we did, and I was really good at it. Like, I was a good dancer, and I loved dancing, but I found it so stressful, like the exams and everything, and I used to cry every night that I had to go. And I used to beg my mum, like, I used to be crying and beg her and say, please, Mum, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, like, I'm scared, I don't want to go. And I realised now it was like panic attacks, and it was no good for me to be doing it. But, you know, Mum would always say to me, well, your grandma has paid this money for you to do it, so you're going to do it, and if not, you're going to ring her and explain why and how ungrateful you are. And I don't mean that to, like, get at my mum, because she thought, like, you know, it's an opportunity for me, and she wanted me to take it. Obviously, I was really unwell, and I remember I locked myself in a toilet dancing once, and I used to just cry all the time, and it was dreadful. You know, I was so emotionally, like, unstable and vulnerable as a kid. You know, I used to sob at school and beg for my mum to pick me up and be crying and, like, come out of lessons, and you know, I was really sick. So, yeah, it must be something to do with the situation, I guess. Like, I think we both were quite, like, obviously it's not for me to say anything about Dan's, but, you know, I think we both got our demons and stuff, and made us really close, and like, in some ways, like, obviously I'm really attached to, like, the characters of, like, Pietro and Wanda, Marvel characters, like, especially the comics versions, and, I think they're important to me because, like, I guess they just remind me a bit of us. You know, the fact that they came out of something really difficult, but it made them really close. And that's kind of us, I guess. Like, you know, I would die for Dan. Like, if anyone ever did anything to Dan, you know, like, God help them. You know, I love Dan more than I love myself. So, and I guess, like, growing up, knowing to look after him, and, like, before I even realised what I was doing, I think I was quite emotionally aware as a child, not emotionally aware, but, like, emotionally intelligent as a child before I realised, because in my head, even as a kid, I was thinking, this is how I felt, I need to try and not have that happen to Dan. Yeah, it was just really difficult. Then exam pressure, you know, all normal pressures. Then, of course, being LGBT as well. Weird situation, you know. Another way of feeling not accepted, and just ongoing, like, sporadic contact from my dad, not seeing him for loads of years. The weird family situation with the uncle that was just, like, really upsetting everyone in the family and, like, causing a lot of grief, and it's so difficult to see somebody, you know, really hurt all these people you love in such a way, and to also, like, hate you as a child. That's difficult for a child to get your head around. I think especially when it's someone that you're taught to love and that you do love. That was kind of weird. Sorry, I just had to, like, answer a message. So yeah, I mean, like, growing up, I guess, like, I kind of want to talk about, like, because I never have spoken about it before, like, weird things, like, as a child, being in such a state of like hyper vigilance, like not to do anything wrong. Like, I remember one time when I was a kid, I was in like year 2 or something, I don't know how old I would have been, and I cheated on a spelling test. I just cheated on one word. I always like worked really hard. I wasn't like, I wasn't someone who'd like properly cheat or anything. But this one time, I cheated on a spelling test by looking in the back of my book for the spelling of something. And it wasn't because I was a bad kid, it was because I felt like I had to be perfect, and I would be hysterically like upset if I wasn't, because I felt like I was letting people down. And like the extent of my perfectionism is that I cheated, so I got my 10 instead of 9. It would have been 9 out of 10, but I needed 10 out of 10. But then when I got home, the guilt of it was crushing me, because I'd always been taught at home, like, in our family we have this thing where Mum always said, like, you can't lie to me, like, if you say honestly, then that means you can't lie, like, you cannot lie. And it had such a power over me. And I was so overwhelmed with guilt that I just sobbed and cried and confessed, and like, obviously I got quite told off, and like, I got in quite a lot of trouble, but like, I was a good kid. Like, I had a really strong sense of like shame. Like, when I was little, I think it was like year R, like really young, I remember parents coming in to see our work, and there was one page in my workbook, and this is how ridiculous it was, like, and how emotionally vulnerable I was. We had to colour in an elephant, I think, and my colouring in wasn't very neat, and the teacher had written, the only bad comment I'd ever had in my book was something like, this could be neater. And I remember this burning shame. I still remember it. We had to get our trays out and show our parents our books, and I was showing my mum, and trying to skip past that page and feeling this absolute burning shame, and her realising I was trying to skip it and seeing it and being disappointed in me, and this feeling of like absolute horror and shame, and like I wanted to die and kill myself. Like, it was that severe young, that feeling of like not trying not to disappoint people. And what I was saying about like putting other people first, like, I remember the strange toxic situation that was going on with like my uncle and my cousin. My cousin wasn't toxic at all. Like, my cousin's just a kid. She was just a kid. But he was very odd, this uncle, and the situation was odd. And because there was so much competition, because I was the oldest, only by like 2 years, but because I was good, and because I, was very close to my grandma and granddad, I was expected to put my wants and needs aside for my cousin and obviously for Dan. Small things, like if like my cousin was staying, and like, I remember one year, like, grandma got us toothbrushes, and like there was a dinosaur one and a Disney princess one and a Thomas the Tank Engine one, and it was obvious that she'd bought, like, I think it was like the Thomas one for Dan. That might not be what they were, but like the Thomas one for Dan and the Disney princesses for my cousin, and the dinosaur one, I guess, was supposed to be for me. Even though deep down in my heart, like, I would have liked the Disney princess one, but like, obviously at that age, like, even then I was like, no, that will be for my cousin, because I knew what I was supposed to say. So my grandma was like showing me them, and she asked me which one I wanted, and thinking I was doing the right thing, because in my head at that young age I was already trying to work out, right, this is what they want me to say, because this one's supposed to be for Dan, this one's supposed to be for my cousin. I was like, oh, the dinosaur one, please. And my grandma's face just like fell, and she seemed like really disappointed, and I realised I'd messed up, and she was like, oh, well, your cousin wanted the dinosaur one. And I was like, immediately I was like, oh no, it's like, I love the Disney princess one, I'll have that, that's lovely, that's the one I wanted anyway. But I felt like I disappointed her, because I was supposed to be the one always, and that was the dynamic when I was growing up, it was just accepted. I was the one that I had to make things okay for that cousin, not through the fault of the cousin, but because her parents were so strange. Like, I remember I'd write us, like, we'd do performances and stuff, and I'd like write little plays, and I'd always write my cousin the good part. Because at that young age I was aware, making sure that I wasn't the main part. Like, my job was to try and make things easier. Um, just, it was just really awful. Um, Things like, we'd be playing, like my uncle and my cousin and I would be playing, and he'd totally ignore me. And I didn't say anything, but I couldn't understand it, and it's because there were no other adults there, and he'd just ignore me, and I'd be like, I think we were pretending to be cows. It was like silly, really. We were like pretending to be cows, and he would just come into the room and just did not speak or look at me, and acted like I wasn't there, and it was humiliating. And I was just a little child, but I still remember feeling really humiliated. Like, there I was, like, pretending to be a cow, and like, I was completely like ignored, and it was weird, and I didn't really tell anyone. You know, this kind of thing happened quite a lot, really, but I didn't really tell anyone. You know, it was just very, very strange. And I used to write to my cousin, you know, because I really did love her, and I still do love her. You know, I still do love her very much. None of it was her fault. And I remember, you know, I was close to her, and I loved her. Of course I loved her. You know, I was brought up I was the oldest, and I felt very protective of, you know, my little cousin and my little brother, and we used to write to each other a lot. And I remember I just got back in touch with my dad after a lot of years of not having him in my life, and I can't remember, I think it was a phone. I think Dad got me my first mobile phone. And my uncle's family are quite wealthy. I mean, he actually works building weapons and things, you know, figures, like working on missiles and things. But, you know, that he's quite well off. And we never have been well off, you know. My mum and my dad are just, like, you know, ordinary people, and, like, my mum is a single parent, and, you know, we struggle quite a lot. And so it was this big deal for me to have a phone, and I was quite innocent, like, the way I thought. And so I was, like, excitedly, like, telling my cousin, like, you know, oh, you know, I'm seeing my dad, and he got me this phone, and it's really cool. And I remember my uncle, like, I think he rang up my grandma and, like, wanted her to tell me off, because apparently I'd been trying to make my cousin feel bad for not having a phone. And it just, you know, that level of scrutiny as a child, when you have no ill intent at all, and you're just a kid who's excited to have their dad back, and you know, that kind of thing was really, really strange. Like, whenever I would have a dance show, this uncle and his partner would try and arrange trips for my grandma and granddad at the same time to go up and see them, so that they would have to make a choice. And if they'd already promised they were going to see my show, then my uncle would, like, take it out on them and my mum, you know, even though he'd deliberately done it that way. And it was so strange for me, because I'd always been the sort of, like, the way I'd been brought up was to love my family and to appreciate my family and be proud of my family when they did stuff, and that was weird. You know, internalising that as a kid, I think, did more damage than I realised. You know, until quite recently, I don't think I realised how much damage that did. And putting myself second, and all these things, you know, denying my wants and needs, and trying to figure out what people wanted me to say, and trying to smooth things over and make excuses for people. And I think all that kind of led to the, you know, me having the BPD that I have, is this emotional instability because of that intense emotional, like, distress that I was put under as a kid. And I guess, like, putting my needs second meant that I never became myself. I never knew how to be myself. I still don't. I'm still very enmeshed with my mum. Like, I still feel like a child. You know, I don't feel like I ever became me. Yeah, it's very, very weird situation. And obviously, like, you know, I know I could be angry, and for some years I was angry about it. For some years I was so angry at everyone, you know, not Dan, obviously, but I was just so angry about this whole thing. And especially when I was starting to realise I had these problems, and it was so difficult to have these extreme problems and to try and get help for them, because I knew that I had to get help, and you know, being treated like I was naughty or like I was dramatic when I had these huge problems and I wasn't coping. And it was very, very difficult. So I guess over years and years I just kind of, like, internalised all that stuff. But I can't say that my family didn't love me, because my family, you know, grandma, granddad, mum, dad, Dan, they loved me, like, so much. And my great-grandma. Yeah, like, they really did love me, like. But it was difficult, and because of, like, what my mum went through, you know, patterns repeat. Patterns do repeat, and, you know, that's all I can say really. Things repeat, and that's why, you know, Dan and I want to be the ones to change that. And like, if sometimes like we find ourselves like going in that way, like we're able to stop ourselves and be like, wait, no, this is what I've learned and what I've observed. That's not what I want to be, and you know, we change that. That's what this is kind of off topic, but that's what I kind of admired about, like, you know, that interview that Prince Harry did, where he talks about like breaking the cycle, and I really related to him. Like, he was talking about his relationship with his dad and the family, and how he saw that his family were victims in the system too, but he wanted to break the chain. And although that made him seem difficult and like he was bad, he had to make that move to make things better. And I guess that's how I feel. And I think that's how Dan feels too. So yeah, there was that stuff going on when I was younger, and, you know, I got to a point where I would completely dissociate. I was very suicidal, very angry, very upset, panic attacks all the time. At some point I stopped eating properly, I became very thin, got more bullied at school because I was thin, had an awful problem with authority at school, which was a weird mixture because I was very well behaved, and I was good academically, especially with creative outlets, because that really helped me. But I was very, very distrustful of authority, of course, because of my background. Authority for me had never been stable or fair, really, or kind necessarily. And so I didn't trust authority at all. So I was this, and in some ways that's done me a great service, because I'm the sort of person now that, like, I don't necessarily believe a politician, or if the police do something and I think, no, like, just because you're the authority, I don't respect you if you're not being fair. You know, you have to earn respect. And that got me into some trouble at school, because I was, like, really well behaved, but I'd also, like, you know, I'd take a stand against things, and then, and in some ways, you know, I you know, kicked off about things. I say kicked off, I was so well behaved, I would never have done anything like bad, but I could be like, I was very wary of being part of a group. I really clung to my individuality, or tried to cling to some sense of individuality, and I got so, you know, so angry within myself at stupid rules, like when they said things like, oh, girls' skirts have to be a certain length, and maybe this is where some of my feminism started coming in, because I remember thinking, like, why, it's not our fault if the boys are at the bottom of the stairs looking up the skirts. You know, it's the boys who are the problem in this instance, why are we in trouble? And when a teacher would say the whole class has to stay in at lunch because one person's misbehaving, and that would make me so angry, because I'd think, you're abusing your authority, that's not fair, we've been good. All those things, really. And then I wasn't very well accommodated at school with my mental health difficulties. They treated me as well like I was naughty. Some of them did anyway. I remember I couldn't go to assemblies. At some point I couldn't even go into my lessons. I was too much of a mess. Absolute anxiety every day. Really unwell, so unwell. I was not coping at all. I was, you know, really losing my mind at that point. And I remember being told that I couldn't see my friends at break, like it was a punishment, you know, because I couldn't go into my lessons. I couldn't see my friends at break, and it was a punishment. They didn't say it like it was a punishment, but it was essentially. They thought that I was being dramatic, and there were so many points where only my hesitancy, my timidness as a kid, stopped me from killing myself as a child. You know, if I'd been a different sort of person, if I'd been a more robust person, if I'd been less taught to be cautious, I don't think I would have made it to my teen years. You know, I think I probably would be dead. But it was that kind of kept me there. But I had so much anger and upset, and then the stuff happened. Another thing happened at home with my mum. A bad situation happened, and that went on for many years. And during that time, I just lost myself. I can't express enough how much I lost myself. I didn't know what was real. I didn't think the world was real. I could not think beyond the present moment. I felt like none of it was real, so nothing mattered. Nothing. And I would get so angry at injustice and stuff that was going on at home, and my mum was going through so much, and she didn't have coping mechanisms, and so it kind of came out towards me, and so difficult when that comes from somebody you love so much. It's always, you know, for some people it's I don't mean it's easy in terms of what they go through, but I mean that you can detach if you don't care about the person, or if the person's never lovely. But if this is somebody you adore, and somebody you rely on, and somebody that you've been so close to all your lives, you know, Mum used to say I was her best friend, and she still does. And then for her to be ill, and because she was ill, not her as a person, but because she was ill, stuff, you know, started happening with me. It just makes you feel so lost and so helpless and out of control and angry and upset, and you turn it inwards because you can't turn it on them because it's not their fault. And you can see it's not their fault. It just is. And I used to get so angry and upset and cut myself. And then when I did this in secret, and then when my mum found out I was cutting myself, I was in huge trouble. I almost got kicked out of the house. One of my friends told the teacher that she was worried about me. I didn't speak to her for a while afterwards, but she did the right thing. Mum thought that I was being manipulative and attention-seeking and trying to hurt her by doing it, and that just made me even more upset because I was in more trouble and I was in crisis. And, you know, thank God I wasn't a more streetwise kid. Thank God I was too scared to go out on my own and too ill to go out on my own, because I would have killed myself. Nothing mattered. I wasn't attached to anything, and I attached so strongly to, like, at that time, to books and media and TV, to this weird, like, symbiotic kind of living through stuff, because I didn't think I was real. And I just started believing all this, like, really, really weird stuff that I know now was, like, completely it was psychosis. And, you know, it was just awful time. Awful time. So all that happened, and I don't even really know why I'm telling you this. I just guess I don't know, I'm scared that I'm making this because I'm worried that I never will be able to say it otherwise. I don't mean that like in a dramatic way, I just mean that if I never said this stuff, if I never spoke about how it felt, what if I never get the chance? You know? I was reading Princess Diana's book, actually. I'm not a royalist at all, I don't believe in the royal family, but I do feel sorry for them as people, because I recognise a dysfunctional setup and people trapped within it. People doing their best, people lashing out at each other, people doing what they've been taught to do, some people just being plain toxic, and people just trying to make the best of it. And on such a public sphere as well, you know, public platform, it must be very difficult. And I read about Diana and I relate so strongly to so much of her story, you know. Just resonates with me so much, and I in her I see so many elements of young me, and I guess it just gives me hope because she got away, she got out. I don't mean that I need to get away or get out of my family, but I mean as in she became herself. You know, she became who she was always meant to be, and she took that power back, and I guess I just feel so powerless in life because of that stuff, and it's so difficult, you know, especially when you feel like you're on your own. Because I just do feel like that sometimes. Because I feel like I don't know how to describe it. I guess I've always been there for Mum, I've always been there for Dan. Obviously when I got ill I was quite useless to Dan, you know, it's quite distressing for Dan really that I'm so ill. I suppose one skill that I have in life because of what's happened is I'm quite skilled at spotting manipulation quite early. So I can often spot that where other people don't. I can see gaslighting, I can see maybe people that are going through a similar situation. I can recognise that quite strongly. I can see those traits in people, I see how they're masked, I kind of have watched how it works all my life. I'm quite aware of that. And I think that ties into why I care so much about like politics and stuff, because that's all it is. That's all that's going on in the world. It's just a bigger, what happens in families is just a microcosm of what goes on out there, you know. The gaslighting of the oppressed group, the people maintaining power, setting the narrative, the people who have complaints, righteous complaints, are seen as being the disruptor of the system because they're pointing out a problem. You know, obviously it's been interesting. I'm so close to Dan, and the way I'm treated in contrast to Dan by different people, because of gender differences, is very interesting to me. And in other ways, Dan's at a disadvantage, because, you know, I remember loads of times in life where we've gone through similar things. We've had to deal with it in different ways because of age and because of gender and because of different circumstances, but we've both gone through a hell of a lot more than I'll ever say, and I'm sure Dan will ever say, and Dan's been told to man up and deal with it. Dan's had to internalise a lot, you know, and I've fallen apart. I've just completely lost it. I guess, again, that's why I guess I relate to Wandering Pietro a lot. Because Pietro gets angry, and he's very, like, forward thinking, he's charismatic, he speaks, and Wanda kind of internalises in to the point that she can't take it anymore, and then she just, like, loses it. I don't know why I'm saying all this, like, I just felt like I needed to say it. It's very, very difficult. Like, I am scared. All the time now, I'm scared. But I had to make this. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I just don't know. I really don't know. I guess I just wanted to say that stuff, but I didn't want to say it in a way that makes me sound unloving or blaming or anything like that. I don't believe in that. I don't think that's helpful, because people are victims, and then sometimes, because they don't have power, it makes them abuse power. And I've been guilty of that too. I think if you grow up in that situation, you learn that way, and you can feel yourself slipping towards it sometimes, and you just have to say, like, wait, no, that might be what I've seen or experienced, but I'm not going to be like that. You know, I think that a lot. I guess that's why I'm quite forgiving, like, when I hear about people, like criminals and things like that, people who do terrible things. I guess my desire is to understand them, because I truly believe that I don't believe that someone starts out bad. I think that due to circumstances, something goes wrong and they get mistreated, and maybe they don't have love, and it makes them act out. Because I know that whenever I've done anything bad in my life, it's been because of those things that have happened, and I can trace it back. I'm quite emotionally aware, you know, and I'm thankful that I can trace it back. But I think some people can't, and I think some people just continue the cycle, and I guess if people don't speak, the cycle never breaks. And to speak doesn't mean that you don't love people or that you're ungrateful or anything like that. You know, it just means that things have to change. Things have to change, and that's why my channel and what I talk about, it's just a weird mixture of mental health stuff and activist stuff and politics, because to me it's all the same thing. You know, it's all one. You know, all these problems we have in society, it's the same pattern. It's the same pattern. You know, sometimes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know? I don't know. All I know is I I forgive every person that has wronged me. I completely forgive them. That doesn't mean that what they did was okay, but I do forgive them. And I understand, I'm old enough to understand that people are messed up in their own ways. You know, people have their own stuff. And I guess all I can do is just try and be compassionate and think about it like that. You know, because no one starts bad. No one starts trying to hurt someone else, hopefully. You know, you hear about these cases of, like, serial killers and things, and so often you look into their backstory and you see, like, a huge trauma in their backstory, or, you know, stuff that they could have been helped for, but society we have wasn't equipped to help them, and so a kind of monster was created, you know. I have to just keep believing that the world there's more good than bad. I do think that, and not to talk about politics again, like censorism, that's why it really frustrates me so much, because I've been in that situation in a non-political sense, where a big injustice is happening to someone who has little power. Experiencing that as a child is tough. I know some of you guys watching this will have had the same. Experiencing that injustice and seeing someone two sides it and try and smooth it over rather than solving the problem, it just buries it deeper, it just makes it worse. And that's so often what happens with censorism until things are too late, and then the person who's doing the harming, whether intentional or not intentional, they just do more harm, and it just cycles on and on and on. It's really awful, but I just have to try and be compassionate, you know. That's just what I keep telling myself. If ever I find myself getting angry or resentful, that I just think, you know, compassion and love, and I'm not perfect, and that could be me, that could have been me, and at some points it has been me, you know. I could have become a very different person. I think maybe having Dan saved me. Having Dan here saved me, and I don't know what it is, but yeah. Okay, well, I'll try and make another video as soon as possible, because I think it really helps to talk, and I just have this awful feeling that I'm just scared that I won't be able to say this again, so I wanted to say it. I really do, you know, forgive everybody that's wronged me. I understand that they're hurting. Just the other day I got, on my channel, I got, like, someone sent, like, quite a graphic rape threat through to me, and then I think they deleted it, or YouTube deleted it, I don't know. I've got the details anyway. It was quite shocking, and, you know, I've had quite a lot of that stuff before, and I guess I feel the same way about, like, I know it's smaller scale, but, like, you know, about trolls and things like that, and in the past when I've made videos about feminism and people have made, like, response videos, but they've been really cruel. They haven't really been arguing, they've been, like, really, really cruel. And in some ways I have to feel sympathy and compassion for those people, because I know from my own life that when somebody does something like that, it's because they are in pain and because they are hurting. Because when you are happy and you are safe and you are secure, that doesn't happen. So I guess I just have to forgive and just try and think, like, it's not okay, but these people are they're probably suffering. They probably are suffering, and maybe with the right help they wouldn't be suffering anymore. They wouldn't be taking it out on people, you know. So much of the lashing out and the cruelty in the world, I think, is because there's not compassion, and our society isn't compassionate and kind, and people think because I'm like feminism and social justice and all that stuff, they think that, like, you know, cancel culture and all that stuff, and, you know, no forgiveness, and I don't believe in that. I do believe in forgiveness, and I do believe that people change. I do believe that people grow. I don't believe that someone is done for or worthless, you know, after they've done something wrong. I don't believe that. I believe in reform. I believe that people can be better. And maybe not all people can, but I mean you have to believe that there's something good deep down in people, don't you? Otherwise you'd just lose your mind, you'd lose hope, and you have to believe that things will get better. And it's all so upsetting, and it's all one to me in my head, you know. It's why I get so emotional about politics, and I don't understand people that aren't, because it's all one to me, you know. It's all the same, because when people suffer, when there's poverty and there's inequality, when people suffer, those people are more likely to make, you know, bad decisions, or they're not going to have the same opportunities, and they're going to lose hope, and it just perpetuates a cycle. If the system is unfair, it's just a bigger version of what loads of us experience, you know, what so many people experience as kids, you know. If the person in charge is unfair, then why, you know, people are going to start thinking, well, why should we be fair? Why should we be kind? You know? I don't know, I guess I'm a strange mixture. Because I am quite, you know, I talk about a lot of stuff, and I call out a lot of stuff, and when I think something's wrong, I speak, and, you know, I'm not afraid to stand up to anyone. I'm not afraid to stand up to authority. I'm not afraid to say, and I have never been afraid to say, if I think something's sexist, or I think something's racist or homophobic and something's wrong, even if that does make me unpopular or something, you know, that I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to do that, because if people don't do that, then things will just get worse, you know? And I already know what it's like to be made a scapegoat. Like, I already know that, so I don't fear it. It upsets me still. It still upsets me. But I guess I don't fear it. And I guess I when I see that to people, see that happen to other people, I guess it upsets me a lot. Like, you know, when I think about Jeremy Corbyn, and, you know, no matter what you personally think about Jeremy Corbyn, you know, obviously, you know, I very much admire him, but, you know, to see the way that the press and, like, the BBC and stuff, the way they presented things, and they really angled their footage, and the way they documented him, and it wasn't fair, and it wasn't just. It's just so upsetting, you know, to see abuse of power. And, you know, I genuinely believe that people who've had power abused against them can abuse other people. You know, they perpetuate the cycle. And in small ways in my life, I've seen that happen. Like, before I was old enough and well enough to get help and to realise that I was so ill, you know, so many, you know, times in my life, I realised that I've acted in a way that was a powerless person. Like, you know, sometimes I've said dreadful things to my mum before, because I've learned that's the way. I guess when that sort of talk is normal and you've had that against you, you start doing it back, because you don't realise that it's so incredibly wrong, you know. You just think that's how you are. And sometimes I even still get those urges. Like, I try to be really kind, but sometimes I feel such an urge. Like, when someone's awful, I feel like such an urge to just completely tear them down verbally, you know. And I'm ashamed of that urge. I'm ashamed of it. It's something that I learned, because that's how things worked, you know. Every little bit of you had to be torn down, every little bit. And now I just do everything I can to not think like that, and to not be that person, you know. I don't want to be that. That's not me. Yeah, and I still get a lot of shame, I guess. I still get a lot of shame, because I still sometimes, my initial reaction is sometimes that stuff. And then I feel such shame about it. But all I know is that we can't change the past, you know. We can't change the past. All we can do is try to do better and be better and help other people and be kind and be compassionate. And I don't mean be kind in the sense that some people say be kind in terms of don't call things out. I mean be kind and compassionate in the sense that, you know, you try and stand up for people that are in a situation like you were, whether that be, you know, sexual orientation or a certain race or gender or any of those things. I think that a lot when I think about what's going on in Palestine. You know, I think about the way it's being presented to people is similar to those kind of situations I've talked about. It's an abuse of power. It's hidden behind progressive labels, and people don't want the nuance, they don't want the difficulty. They don't want to accept that sometimes a victim will push back, but that doesn't mean they're not a victim. Yeah, I guess I'm going to stop this now because it's really long. Thank you for watching, and even if no one's watching it, it helps me so much to just talk about it all. I don't know. Things are just bad, but all I keep thinking is that things will get better, and, you know, I'm going to keep trying and determined to be a good person and a kind person and a compassionate person, not to become discouraged. And because if we stop believing that things can change, then we've lost the battle. You know, you have to believe it. You have to believe that there's goodness in people. I don't know, it's very complicated, and maybe in another life I'd be a psychologist or something, I don't know, but I don't know, like, every day at a time, each day as it comes, just, you know, hour by hour if need be, just keep going, and I will get better. I have to get better, you know, I will, I have to. I've got better before. I have been better before. I've been like this and I've got better. Okay, love you loads, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon. Okay, love you, bye.